The Ozone Roadster 4 is here.
I'm not ready.
The Ozone
Roadster
4 is
here.
Woo!
Yeah.
The Roadster 4 is here. It's a new product from Ozone Paramotor. We got to fly it all each. Amazing pilots, minus myself. I'm just out there not trying to break it like the Moxie. So I'm gonna go from left to right. We'll introduce ourselves in our normal wing that we fly.
My name is Michael, and I usually fly the Mojo 24.
My name is Micah, and I'm try to be on the Viper XC20.
My name is Whitney, and I normally fly a Sirocco 318.
My name is Matt, and I normally fly a Sirocco 324. I've spent a lot of time on a Spider 326.
My name is Reese. I fly the Ozone Spider 3 22 meter.
I'm Jillian, and I fly a Viper XC 16 meter.
So as you heard, we all have an array of different wings that we normally fly. We're going to start with our first impressions. Coming out of the box, the Ozone has some new things, whether it's the color scheme, the new risers, which the sublimations are kind of unique. If you come from the old Ozone model, my Spider 3 has red A's, which these do not. Mike, you fly the Mojo. This is kind of like a stepping stone of where you would like to potentially be.
Yeah, I fly the Mojo now, and I've been on the Spider 3 a little bit in between, but most of my time is on the Mojo. But yeah, the Roadster 4, I mean, coming from the Mojo just to the Roadster 4 is a huge step up. I mean, the feel, everything about it is just all around better. Starting with the colors, I love the colors on the bottom. I mean, the winglets, the risers, everything about it is just, it's really nice. But if I'm comparing it to a Spider, it has that roll, like, it just feels really fluid and really stable. I mean, it's definitely a next wing contender.
That's going to bring us to the performance evaluation of this wing. Micah, you got to do a lot of ground handling with this wing on all three sizes, which was really cool.
I did. Yeah.
As well as you come from a more advanced scale of wing. Why don't you explain what your experience was like on the Roadster 4?
The Roadster 4, I liken it a lot to the Kona 2, actually. I was flying that for the last few years out in Colorado, and it has a similar build structure to it, like the mini ribs on the trailing edge. I think that was a nod to the Kona 2, and it provides a much more unified feel to that trailing edge. It requires less brake input to have the same amount of effect, and that in turn led to really intuitive and just locked-in feeling ground handling altogether. The first thing I noticed was how easily this wing hand-kited. It was not something like the Spider and the Roadster 3, where you kind of have to work on it a little bit, and you have these tip deflations all the time with hand kiting the Spider or Roadster 3. The Roadster 4 was really a lot more comfortable to hand kite.
Would you think that's anything to do with the winglets?
I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea.
I can guarantee you it's new fabric.
But Ozone knows what they're doing, and that's what they're showing by making gliders easier to handle in general. But yeah, the new fabric is definitely, I like it a whole lot more. It's not as like crispy, waxy feeling. It's got this sort of plush fabric feel to it, which is the same as all the other new gliders coming out on Ozone's lineup. But yeah, as far as ground handling goes, super easy. The inflation is remarkable. I'm really eager to get new pilots on this glider, like student pilots on the wing, and see how well it works for them, because the winglets do add a lot of stability. So I think it's going to be great.
You're going to hear a lot of the winglets adding stability throughout all these reviews. Whitney, go ahead.
Yeah, when I flew the 20 meter, and having not flown many wings with the winglets yet, I could tell they were there. Like, I could tell they were doing something, which is making it just feel a lot more rock solid in the sky. Now, having flown the Sirocco 3 for a long time, going backwards to a B-rated wing like the Roadster, it was different for me. I'm like, oh, I don't have to work as hard to keep this thing flying straight sometimes. So I really liked the stability of it. Just the overall feeling of the wing felt softer and more secure, I guess, compared to my Sirocco. But I have to say, with the winglets, getting it to roll into like a wing over, it felt a lot smoother. And the brake pressure was a little bit harder on it compared to my Sirocco, but it felt like it was doing what I wanted it to do when I pulled the brake. It wasn't like thinking about it for a second, it did it, which was really nice.
Cool. Matt?
Yeah, so the main thing I think that impressed me about the Roadster 4 was the inflation. Like, I did a forward inflation, very little wind. I think it was about 2 or 3 miles an hour wind that day, and the wing just shot right up. Mm-hmm. Like, it was up and ready to go within, a couple steps of me starting to launch. That's very similar to the Spider 3, the inflation characteristics of that. I think this wing is very similar to that. This does have the heavier fabric, the Roadster versus the Spider, but I couldn't really tell. Like, it just came right up and it launched almost immediately.
Feels like
a couple
a Spider.
steps. Yeah, feels a lot like a Spider.
I would say I come from the Spider 3, and it's night and day difference with the stability. I've got to say, the inflation was there, but once I'm off the ground is really when I see this wing shine. I drive a 1965 Mustang, and I drive a 2007 Chevy Suburban, and when I'm in the 65, it's just like all over the place. Like, I got to keep my hands on it.
Is that what your voice sounds like?
Yeah, it's scary. But, going from that to the Suburban, it's boring to drive. You just hold it, go straight. Now, the Roadster 4, I mean, it was just so lock solid. It was incredible to actually feel that type of difference. I have only flown the Viper XC with winglets, and it's a nimble wing, so you don't really, it's stable compared to very nimble wings, but when you have a Spider version with winglets, that version of stability was very apparent. And of course, yeah, the Roadster 4, excuse me. And of course, I do love the different color schemes and having color underneath. That's awesome. The only other caveat that I had in my experience was the trim range. It has a large trim range, so does the Spider, but getting into the full trimmed in, I was challenged to get all the way in, and that's my only con of this wing.
Mm-hmm. I spent about 1.5 years flying a Spider 3 and really didn't have much experience on the Roadster, but the Spider 3 is just a lightweight version of it. So going to the Roadster 4, it just kind of emphasized almost the fragility that a Spider kind of has. Like, on the inflation, it pops up really quick, but flying the Spider 4 was like, man, this thing just feels solid. Like, it feels stable and solid, whereas the Spider feels a little more limp to it. And we've also started flying our students on the new Moxie Powers, and I've flown that wing a lot with the winglets and the heavier material, and so stepping from that onto a Roadster 4 was like, oh, this is like the perfect stepping stone. Going from a Moxie to a Mojo to a Roadster 4 is like, you're not making huge leaps. It's just like a very nice gradual progression while still including the safety of the stability of the winglets and, just slowly increasing the trimmer range. Mm-hmm. So the stitching on the Spider 3 and Roadster 3, after a good amount of use would start to slip. So when people let their trims out, rather than it just going out one notch, it would slip all the way out, which is further than you may want it to be.
It's got an added like bar that the trimmer webbing goes through.
Yeah.
And so it adds more friction.
Yes.
And therefore it gives you more control as you're trying
Yes.
to move that trim.
It's
Yeah.
the roller system, right?
The roller
It's
system.
in conjunction with an added little
That's pretty
friction.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
The next section we're going to talk about is handling and feel. We'll talk about turn initiation and coordination, brake pressures and feedback, stability and turbulence, and overall predictability. We can all just kind of jump in on this. I'll start with saying, just so I'm going to take a mini wrap and just feel what it feels like to get into an oscillation and then let it fly and then let it dampen itself out. You know, as you see, the winglets are really working here. Big left-hand turn, let go. Yeah, I've never felt the stability of winglets really work as well as it is on the Roadster 4. I mean, this thing is just locked overhead. It's like the difference of gone from my 1965 Mustang, where it's like jumping all around the road, to like the stability of a modern car that has power steering. The winglets, I mean, they don't even feel like they're doing too much dampening with like the ability to really throw down. I mean, I'd fly the Spider 3, so that's about as gnarly as I want to get with wingy dinghies without a reserve. I yeeted it into a spiral, which is not what you want to do. But when I come from general aviation, when I was getting my training, it was like you learn to take off, you do some steep turns. And so I did one with a Kona 2, and Eric watched me come out of that thing with so much energy and just get like light and just balloon and come back down. And he's like, I saw you scare the mess out of yourself. And so I realized you've really got to deal with energy management in a different way in paramotoring. Like a deep spiral on the Kona, super scary. Like I feel like it's locked in really heavy. This wing is awesome. I don't know why, I just felt like I wanted to do a really steep turn with this wing, and it was so predictable. It never got out of control like the Kona did. I don't know why the Kona dives into it like that. I don't have the problem with the Spider doing that. But now with the winglets, and I just had the most fun pulling a lot of G's and coming out safely.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I did the same thing the first time I flew it. Like when I got up and I just grabbed a handful of left and just pulled it, and it was like I pulled it normally like I would pull my Mojo, but you know, obviously it just turned and banked, and yeah, it's a lot more fluid. It feels a lot better, but
tracks.
definitely a lot less input to make it do the same thing on that. So.
Right.
As a refined pilot, flowing into banking turns, I felt that it was, yeah, I definitely agree. Very predictable. It wants to, will you stop it?
Reese is busy dying over here.
Children.
Refined.
Unlike a lot of gliders without winglets, the Roadster 4 wants to come out of those rolls, and it wants to do it stably. So if you were in a yeeted left bank turn and you just dump that brake pressure, what I discovered in a more refined way was that it comes out slowly, and yeah, you'll oscillate if you just go hands up. Like if you were to black out, that's going to definitely oscillate back and forth, but you are going to come out of that turn and you're going to be safe, whereas on a Spider or a Roadster 3 may have a little bit more excitement going on in lieu of that sort of maneuver. So yeah.
I think it's a much more forgiving wing. Like you can do those things like pull a little bit too hard on the brake, and it's gonna recover back nicely for you.
Yeah, agreed.
Brake pressures, I mean, there was a little bit of slack. I noticed like maybe 1.5 inches before it actually deformed the trailing edge that, you know, but it's a newer wing, or it's like for a newer pilot, so you don't need a ton of instantaneous
Yeah,
brake
it's
pressure.
definitely a learning wing, right? It's definitely a step in the progression.
I think it gives instructors a lot of ease. Like we've been working with our students and stepping them up on wings, and I think that talking about the safety component of it and how it does come out slowly out of those turns and doesn't oscillate like crazy gives the instructors a lot of ease as well as we improve our students' skills.
It'll make a natural progression for students who want a wing that's, not going to get beat up so quickly like a Spider might. And the new fabric on the Roadster 4 seems like it's going to be really tough and robust. Only time will tell, but I think it seems like a good natural progression for somebody who has the skills they want to develop off of a Mojo and still give you a lot of safety and security, that feeling of safeness while you're flying it. Even, trying to get your wingtip to the horizon as a new pilot, I think just the roll stability added with the winglets is going to make it nicer, more comfortable feeling for a newer pilot.
And that brings us to stability and turbulence and predictability. I got to get in some bumpy air. I mean, those winglets, like I discussed earlier, it's just lock solid.
Yeah, it was pretty smooth when I was flying it, so I didn't have a whole lot of the turbulence experience, but it was pretty, it locked in very solid the entire time. Felt like it ate the bumps up pretty easily.
I flew behind Matt. That was my extent of
Turbulence.
feeling turbulence, yeah.
My first flight was about 10 minutes at sunset in stronger winds. Like, we didn't have students flying. We had a bunch of instructors out there just doing laps and touch and goes. So I took the Roadster 4 up, and I was thoroughly impressed. It was just fun to do touch and go after touch and go. It really was not disturbed by the turbulence whatsoever, and I was flying through everyone's wake doing touch and goes and felt like, I wasn't catching any major sink because of that, and my flare was super smooth the entire time. So that was really fun. It was a cool first experience to the wing rather than going up in nice smooth air. But okay, let's test the endurance and stability of it first.
Yeah, it was a blast to do touch and goes with that in that stronger wind, because you could really test the brakes and see what it wanted out of you. And it was so smooth and soft coming in for a touch and goes.
Yeah.
It reminded me of kind of like doing it on a Moxie in that it was just really kind of soft touchdown in the wind. Now, no wind, I haven't tried that yet, but I think it's going to perform equally as well.
Because I think that's one thing that Ozone is really capitalizing on this glider, because with the Spider and Roadster, less passive oscillation stability, right, with those gliders. But with this glider, I can go trims all the way out and apply speed bar, be fully accelerated, and that glider does not oscillate by itself. And I can even lean back and forth and try to get it to oscillate and then stop my weight shifting, and the glider comes back to that solid spot. And I believe, if Ozone may correct me here, but that is due to the winglets. Like, that is the purpose of winglets, is to not sacrifice speed for stability. You throw those little ears on there, and now you're tracking straight and in a confident way, where you can get your phone out and not worry about controlling with the brakes to keep that thing going straight.
And Mike, you can kind of touch upon the speed of the Mojo versus what you experienced on the Roadster 4.
Yeah, the Mojo is definitely a little more faster. It feels comparable to the Spider. I just come off the Spider 20 meter.
The Mojo's a little bit faster?
No, the Roadster. Yeah, the Roadster's faster, definitely. I'd come off the Spider 20 and then got on the Roadster for the 22 meter. And speed-wise, it's almost comparable. I mean, the 22 feels just as nimble, almost as fast. I mean, if I didn't know I was flying a different wing, I would have thought it was a Spider. I mean, it feels very comparable.
And indeed, it's very close. Safety and passive behavior, resistance to cravats, and other common issues. Michael, you did some collapses?
I did not.
You didn't do some collapses. You did some.
I did some big ears.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
And the one thing I noticed on the big ears, if a pilot likes to do big ears, it's a lot more stable. With the Spider and Roadster 3, those ears just want to keep flopping back out. They go and they oscillate back and forth, and it's not a stable big ear configuration whatsoever. Not the case with the Roadster 4. You pull those puppies in, they stay in, they don't want to jog back out at all. So that was the extent of my collapse playing around. I just hadn't flown in a while before that, so I didn't.
Right. Let's just go back and say none of us did any collapses. We're not SIV school here. We're very much get people into the skies, and we'll just move right along to the comfort and ergonomics. We can just talk about the weight ranges, right? They offer a very wide range, so depending on your weight, you should be able to find your size wing in this glider.
Yeah, and they have a new size in a 20 meter this year in the Roadster 4, where previously it was only down to a 22 square meter wing. So I like that they're opening up their range a little bit for the smaller pilots that exist. in the sport for something in that intermediate wing area, or just, you know, beginning to expand your wing horizons.
Would this wing be a good potential for anyone that's flying a trike?
Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. Because it's so stable, the issue with trikes tends to be oscillation, because you cannot counter the passive oscillation tendencies with your weight shift on a trike as easily as you can in a foot launch rig. So the fact that you've got winglets makes it a lot more stable.
Yeah, and it comes up to a 30 meter. So if you're a solo trike pilot, you know, they've got a size for that. And I think the efficiency of the glider, as well as just being like a nice intermediate skill advanced glider, is great for trike pilots to have as well. So they're not just always on big boaty wings, flying around, and they can go on some nice long cross countries and have the stability of the winglets, or do touch and goes with their trike and still have fun.
Durability and build quality, we talked about it. There's some new materials coming out from Ozone. Is this new from the 3 to the 4?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a new fabric material that they chose for the Roadster 4. And kind of to Micah's point earlier, it feels pillowy. It's like a smoother fabric versus crispy chip bag, traditional material that you get straight out the package from the factory. And I think the overall build quality, it seems solid as a rock.
Seemed very solid.
Very solid. I'm looking forward to seeing one in, 6 months, in a year of full use, to see how it stands up to time and test.
We've got a couple of these Roadster 4s out for demos. We're inputting these wings into our school here, so we'll definitely have plenty of feedback coming to you guys in 6 months.
I know one thing with the Roadster 3 that turned people away is when they were launching from altitude. I've heard a lot of instructors and pilots who are launching at higher elevations to say that they would rather fly a Spider 3 over the Roadster 3, just because it didn't inflate quite as easily at elevation. It just felt slower and laggier, I guess. So I'm interested to see if the improvements of the Roadster 4 also improve in terms of launching at elevation because of the different aspects of the wing that it now has.
Road trip.
Yeah, so either we'll have to take a road trip or send them out to some pilots out west or at higher elevations to see what they think compared to the Roadster 3.
Yeah, flying the Roadster 3 versus the Spider 3, night and day difference. I'll be shocked if they do the same thing with the Spider 4 that they did with the Roadster 3. Sorry, the Spider 3 to the Roadster, to the Spider, from the Spider 3 to Spider 4, thank you, what they will be able to accomplish, because at this point I'm just leaning towards getting the Roadster, like get that higher, stronger build quality compared to the Spider 4.
I think that was the differentiation before, was the Spider was the lighter weight fabric, so it was easier to launch, but if the Roadster is now also easier to launch,
so easy,
then I guess it comes down to the conditions that you're going to be launching in, right? Are you going to be launching from runways and pavement or sand or something that's a little grittier, or like grass?
Yeah, people out west tend to be on kind of grittier terrain than the East Coast pilots who have nice grass. So, I mean, the Roadster seems like a wing you would want if you're launching from dust and rocks and dirt. But if the launch characteristics aren't there to get up in elevation, then you're going to opt for the Spider 3. So I think hopefully the new characteristics of the Roadster 4 will lead people towards that at elevation.
I want to kind of go back to the Spider 3. The shark nose seems so much larger than what the opening is on this Roadster 4. I mean, it's very noticeably different. Would you think that they would bring this type of opening to the Spider 3? They'd have to, huh?
Yeah, I would think so. Evolution of the shark nose. Yeah, I think that also leads to the stability feeling of the wing too. Like, it feels to me like the wing might be more pressurized because of the way that the air flows into the wing.
Yeah, I know it gives a more aerodynamic profile having the shark nose on the Roadster 4, a little bit with the profile more bottom facing compared to the Spider or Roadster 3. Roadster 4, a little bit more bottom facing means a little less drag.
And I think the openings are a different size
smaller.
as well.
Yeah.
Is that what you were kind of referring to? Is you would be shocked to see that come to the Spider 3?
I would be shocked if it's different. I think it would be about the same.
Right.
Yeah.
As the Roadster 4.
As the Roadster 4.
Copy. Yeah, I think so.
That's always been the case in the past, is that the Spider and the Roadster are the same exact wing, same design, it's just different fabric.
Yeah.
And we would only know about the durability after 6 months of use and pushing this wing into the arms of pilots that are in these abrasive conditions like out west.
Yeah, one more comment on the shark nose. With it being a little bit even more bottom facing than the Spider 3 Roadster 3, is it makes that inflation so much easier, because as soon as it's in the drogue chute position or the power zone behind you, it is getting that direct airflow and allowing that glider to inflate and pressurize that much quicker. So I felt like, compared to the Spider 3 even, the Roadster 4 has a better inflation. And also, getting off the ground is faster too. I don't know if it's because the inflation is so much easier, if it just felt like the takeoff was quicker, but I felt like I was getting off the ground pretty darn fast in only 4 or 5 miles an hour of wind. And at one point I didn't have wind. So it was like launching a Mojo practically with Spider speeds or Roadster speeds.
Anyone want to tackle the mini ribs?
Sure.
I know nothing about it. Does the Spider 3 have mini ribs?
No, no, the Spider Roadster 3, I got to get this right. Spider Roadster 3 does not have mini ribs, and that is on the trailing edge, the last 8 inches or so has this extra stitching between the cells. That is your mini rib, and what that does is it gives a little bit more rigidity to your trailing edge across the trailing edge. So when you're pulling brake pressure, it requires less brake pressure. It's now more aerodynamic and efficient when you're pulling that pressure, because you have that whole entire trailing edge panel acting as a panel. It's all unified, rather than having these different, where the lines are connected to the trailing edge, these points that are getting pulled down and deflected. It's now more of a unified, like an airplane wing panel.
I could see that in the last video where you were talking about the wing, how you were kiting, and you could really see the trailing edge, how it almost looks, like it's separate from the wing.
Like an aileron.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the word.
In the manual, it says that the mini ribs are derived from their competition gliders, and that's pretty cool that they are incorporating these technologies into basically a beginner glider to get better efficiency in the air, faster,
Better inflation.
and better inflations. So that's pretty awesome for Ozone to bring that to a beginner series glider.
And as someone getting into this sport for the first time, making their first purchase on a glider, you're probably not going to have much buyer's remorse in choosing the Roadster 4, because it's going to grow with you as a pilot. It has all the technology of the more advanced line, but you're still on a safe wing.
Last category, we have versatility and target audience.
Target audience, I think, is the beginner to intermediate pilot, probably 50 to 100 hours on their beginner wing, stepping up into something that's potentially a little bit sportier, a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient.
I would say an area that is actually turbulent. If you're not in Florida and you're having to get bumped around and it's not really working out for you, this wing will help mellow out some of those bumps.
I would say if you're an adventure pilot too, like a more experienced adventure pilot, if you want something that's going to get you off the ground in pretty short order and fly through those unpredictable situations with predictability, it's going to be a fantastic wing for an adventure pilot as well.
I think it's a good first wing, or like I said, beginner to intermediate. If you've flown your first wing and you're looking for something different, you can still, even advanced people can still have fun on it.
I think it makes a great all-rounder wing for beginner pilots up into intermediate, honestly to advanced pilots, because you have a bunch of great stability improvements. You have the option to use tip steering. You can tie in your tip steering eventually. You can do all sorts of aerobatic tricks with this wing in general that you can do with advanced wings and still have that better passive safety rating. It's a great wing for everybody.
Whether you're thermaling, cross-countrying, or just flying on the coastal regions, you've heard it from 6 amazing pilots.
Make that 5 amazing pilots.
This is the new Roadster 4 from Ozone. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you right here on the Aviator Show.